Hello. So the person I wanted to talk about is Margaret Floy Washburn, who's argued to be the first woman who got a PhD in psychology as a subject as a whole. She did her studies at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, but she wasn't actually allowed to enrol on a PhD. She was only allowed to be an observer because they didn't admit women into the programs. And it was actually a male psychologist, Cattell, who encouraged her to do a PhD at a different institution where she would be allowed to get this. She was the first head of psychology department, a female head of psychology department at Wells College, and she actually ended up founding a psychology department in her original University of Vassar College in Poughkeepsie. One of the reasons I like Margaret Floy Washburn, apart from obviously getting the first PhD in psychology, is she really argued against the current beliefs at the time in terms of how human beings work. So at the time it was behaviorism, and she argued for the fact that there was a consciousness component, there was a mental state that went along with this. She particularly liked consciousness, and she argued that, you know, behavior was actually kind of an indicator of what was going on inside the brain. Excuse me. Excuse me. And so she sort of went against traditional thinking at the time, and actually even her supervisor, which was Titchener, said she should just forget consciousness. It didn't matter. Mental states were nothing that people needed to study. And a lot of her work ended up sort of forming part of the basis of the foundation of cognitive psychology, which is obviously a major discipline within psychology now, because we know that there's an awful lot going on inside the brain. She actually argued for the integration of mind and body. So one of the areas within psychology is kind of discuss what happens in the mind, what happens in the body, and how the two are connected. And at the time, there was sort of this idea that there was this concept of a soul, there was this idea of behavior, and the two were not connected, and she argued for that connection. But she actually didn't do that just in humans. She actually looked at the animal population as well, and she was one of the early pioneers that sort of said, you know, animals have mental states too. They have this experience of consciousness, they have emotions, and it's not just humans that are actually subject to mental states that are sort of guiding their behavior. So she did argue, she had a motor theory, but she argued that all conscious activity could be traced back to behavioral actions. And she published a number of different books in her lifetime, but what she considered her greatest work was on movement and mental imagery. So it's sort of the idea that conscious processing is evident in our movements, and this was what sort of helped form the basis of cognitive psychology amongst obviously lots of other individuals. But she had obviously a lot of help along the way, but she got with support rather than, you know, people opening doors for her. So she fought for all these individual achievements herself. She, you know, Titchener actually sent her dissertation to Wilhelm Wundt, another pioneer in psychology, who translated it and published it for her. And she then went to try and repay that with some translation work she did for Wundt at a later date. So she did. There's many. She went against sort of accepted wisdom at the time and really pushed for what she thought, and sort of didn't allow her gender to get in the way. And then obviously come to, oh, hang on, where are we? On to my personal achievement. Can everybody see that? Okay, so
it's not moved on, I don't think. Try it again.
Is that showing?
It's just my screen.
Can everybody see?
Moved on my screen either.
Right. Okay. It's all right.
There we go. That's it.
If I share that, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so my personal achievement is actually it's the first one really, because it was quite a journey to get there. So I'm the first person in my family to have published a book, but equally, it's such a huge thing to do. At the time I was writing, so at the time I got given this contract, I had 2 associate lecturer roles, I had a teaching position in a school, I had various tutor roles, and I was trying to kind of work on research as well. Plus I had kind of a music side, which took up a lot of evenings and weekends. And so when I got this, I was actually involved in the study skills course at Aston University, and the guy who was my mentor there, he'd actually been approached with a proposal from Oxford University Press, and he said, well, that's lovely, but actually what you're talking about is a course that wasn't written by me, it was written by Vanessa. So they contacted me, and in my usual way, I looked at the proposal they'd put together and sort of pulled it to pieces and put it back together again. in the usual way I do. You know, we don't need that, we don't need that, we do need this, you can't have this, etc. And it was an intimidating thing to go through, because you have to sort of stick to your guns and go, I do know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this a long time now. And yet equally, it's very intimidating being faced with this, you know, editor from Oxford University Press, who you do feel, you know, they're much more of a lead in their particular field. So you have to kind of, you know, go against what they think is the correct thing to do. And you have to say, no, actually, from my perspective within psychology, this is the correct thing to do. And sort of putting it all together, you know, I was obviously juggling multiple jobs. And at the time, I actually went through various personal challenges, which meant I ended up leaving all those roles and had to get another job, and which is this one here. So I got my lectureship here in 2010, and I had to deal with all that. And then sort of during 2011, I found myself pregnant with my daughter, and continuing to work on this book throughout all that time was a struggle. And there were a few conversations with my editor about, you know, was I able to complete all this work by myself? Did I want to bring in a co-writer? And I didn't really want that, because that would have meant sharing credit for something I'd already put a huge amount of work into, and B, it didn't really sit right with me. You know, I didn't want to share credit for this thing, so I said no. You know, I will get this done, and I did manage to just about get it. But sort of in between, you know, starting a new job, learning the ropes here, and dealing with all of the edits and everything that came with it whilst pregnant. And I was very poorly when I was pregnant as well, so sort of dealing with proofs in between, you know, episodes of morning sickness was not much fun. But sort of putting that together is something I'm really proud of, because a whole book it's a huge achievement for anybody, and to have put that all together by myself during a really difficult period in my life is something I'm proud of myself for doing. Obviously, lots of people have lots of very different challenges, and by no means I had massively significant challenges. But it's opened sort of lots of doors for me. So it's obviously given me a second edition, because it was really well received. It gave me the confidence to put together a course on academic misconduct, which we now have as Penalty 1. And it's helped me sort of have the confidence to actually propose another book, which I'm writing at the minute, which is due out later this year. So that sort of initial stubbornness and refusal to give in to kind of external pressures and all the things that were going on in my life, which I could easily have walked away from that project due to any one of those individual issues. So I'm, you know, it's that's the original thing that I'm quite proud of. For, well, like I said, it's the first person in my family to publish a book, so I'm quite pleased. So that's all from me.
Fantastic.
Stop, Jen. There we go.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Vanessa.